Rick, Rick is the trick here because he didn't know that he had to go far below in order to show his hand, you see. Let me explain this to you more clearly, because as you know, we're always a little bit evocative in what we say. Let me start out. This is Tobias, and I watched the play of energy today in Rick Archer's group. And Steph said, well, why are these people even in here? Why are they on his Facebook page when they say that he is not spiritual and not good and not a compassionate person, etc., etc., etc.? He's certainly not enlightened. So why are these enlightened people who know which ones are enlightened and which ones aren't on his page? Why don't they just go find the other enlightened ones and play with them? And so this is the question I want to know. I'm asking those of you in here if you have thoughts on this. Why would people attach themselves to someone they thought was silly and unkind and unenlightened, even though they had produced so many videos of their efforts to enlighten people through sharing energy from other people who they interview? He's been doing it for a long time, long before others caught on and decided they could cash in on this process of interviewing people who would tell people how enlightened they were. So why do you think people cling there? And then when he posts something, they exclaim about how unenlightened he is, how silly he is, how unkind he is, etc. If you want to think about it a minute, that's okay. Why would they do that? That was my question when I was there. And I get a little bit, I love to speak up at things because it helps me find out how people will reply. It helps me to understand people better, actually, to prick them a bit and see what happens. But these people were on his post today, and half of them were saying, I can't believe you posted this. How uncompassionate can you be? And da 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 da. And I'm like, why are you even here then? Shouldn't you hang around compassionate people if that's what you want? You got of the universe? What do you think draws people to something like that? And he never replies. He just lets them say whatever they want to say. He's not like me where he'll jump on their posts and say, nah.
I have a thought. The prodigal son comes to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's he probably realizes that he has a purpose, maybe like the position of a teacher for those who are supposed to not be enlightened. Maybe the flashlight to show them the way. I don't know. But it's the point of God accepting everybody. So I guess who is he to reject anybody?
Well, he maybe just leaves them alone because they watch his show.
That too.
I don't know or he just doesn't care. He just has fun posting whatever he wants. Maybe he enjoys the back and forth. I don't know why he does it, but I just wonder why the other people are there. Is it something they're looking for? Is it something inside of them that's trying to break free?
maybe they're trying to convince themselves something. I don't know. Hmm. Everybody likes to make themselves look better than other people and like they know better or know more. I don't know. It's an ego
They could,
thing.
yeah, so they could come on there and chastise Rick and anybody else that makes a comment that they don't want, and it feeds their ego.
Or maybe there's a fear, or I don't, I'm just throwing stuff out there because I'm
Yeah,
not
I hear
quite.
you. They're good thoughts. I don't know, Paula, you think of anything? Jim?
Not really.
But people do it to everybody in all kinds of social medias situations. Everybody's bickering with each other. It's just everybody's so divided on, and won't accept other people's points of views. They just want to bicker and they just want to, you know, I don't
Well,
know
I
if that
won't take,
makes them
I
feel
won't take,
better
I
about
will,
themselves
yeah,
to try to
go
put
ahead.
other people down. They're trying to make themselves higher up because they putting other people down. There's that stools building up that we talk about.
Well, I won't accept other people's point of view if their point of view is an opinion that I find repugnant to reality, if that makes sense. In other words, so I'll take them on, and that's part of my fierceness, I guess. I will take them on, and others have different approaches to it. But a lot of people on there were like, it had to do with Trump and the assassination of him, and it was a joke, but it wasn't really a joke. It was kind of like Vincent van Gogh cut off his own ear, and we essentially deserve what we get because we cut off our own ear when we start making jokes about killing people and shooting them in the legs and whatever. If that's the way we want to play, then why are we complaining and whining and being a martyr if that's the way we play? So that was the essence of it for me, which made sense. But a lot of people in there were like, well, we have to cry our crocodile tears, even though it's like going to a funeral and these people that hated someone and never went to visit them, moaning and crying and saying, "Oh, wonderful person he was." Now that he's dead, that kind of thing. And a lot of people were very pacifistic. Well, we can't say these kind of things or do these kinds of things because it will just ratchet up the violence. So this is a good topic because my position on it is, did the pacifists stop the Nazis? Did they stop the Japanese from bombing Pearl Harbor and invading Alaska? Did the pacifists resolve the need? We celebrate the Revolutionary War yet now, but it wasn't pacifists. People who just laid down and said, "We're doormats, just do what you want to us." And we celebrate the Civil War. That, the pacifists didn't save the United States from a civil war. If there's a group of people that are bent on a certain trajectory, laying down in front of them and letting them run over you isn't going to solve the problem. This is my thinking. It hasn't solved it in the past. And I don't see it solving it now just by being a doormat and saying I'm lying down. And I'm just going to say this right now. It occurred to me. I don't have anything against Biden. I don't have anything against people that have a handicap. I'm not going to be Trump and make fun of them, and so I don't have a problem if somebody's getting older and they have a little bit of trouble and they drop a word or two. That comes to us. And so I'm not mocking somebody for that. And as far as I know, he's got intelligent and capable people beside him to help him. And I don't think he's out to be a king. I don't think he's out to ruin the US. I think that he's got intelligent people that will do it. But I don't think he has the fire in his belly that is needed at this time. I think right now we need somebody with fire in their belly. And that has come to me just today that they keep pushing on me. But the idea that there needs to be somebody who has fire in their belly who can stand up and say, there is another way. There is a third option. We don't have to have a civil war. We don't have to plead for money from you so that somehow if we throw enough money at it, it's going to go away. It isn't going to work that way. So that's my own thoughts on it. But so I thought that for me anyway, getting on that site and seeing what people said and responding to them and seeing how they then responded to me helped me to clarify my own thinking. So I'm not worried if somebody comes back and says something that I said to them back to me. It'll just help clarify my thinking. But those people who just stand back and say, well, we can't say anything that's not nice. As they told me, when I asked them about this or when we were talking about it, for the Trump train, it's okay if they fire from the train out the windows at people. But don't you dare fire at the Trump train. And I'm not for violence at all. But violence is coming, and it's not going to be the violence of, it is already the violence all over the world, man against man, human against human. It's already there. And there's already violence in this country of people against people. But you've never seen violence till you see what happens with climate change. And if that's what you ask God for, if that's what you've envisioned is violence, then God will give you violence. And, in the end, you are an eternal being, so you get to choose your trajectory. You get to choose for yourself what you're going to be. And if you're just going to be a doormat and, sit in front of the door for those who are going to come in and destroy the USA, then you're a doormat. And if you're going to stand up and say, I'm sorry, I'll stand by Jesus. If you crucify him, you're going to have to take me too. Then you're not a doormat. Right? And if you understand that you're an eternal being and that this is, the moment they slaughter you, you'll be in heaven. It helps to give you, it's understanding. It's a level of willingness to just follow your heart that takes you beyond what should I say? It's a willingness to follow your heart no matter what, that takes you beyond the limitations of the dogma that afflicts everyone in this country, one way or the other. It's the willingness to just say, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to be me. I'm going to do what feels right to me. And if it feels right to me to stand up beside Jesus and say, hey, if you crucify this guy, you're going to have to crucify me too. And then if there were enough people in Jerusalem on that day, 100 of them that stood up by Jesus and said, we're not going to be violent towards you. But if you think that you can be violent to this person because to feed your egos, then we have to have his back. And all those people worshiping Jesus have not a clue what it means to have the courage to stand up and be you and not worry about it because you have somebody's back. And Jesus doesn't need a lot of carry sins for a lot of people, but it's been very painful for him to know that they didn't have his back, that humanity has not had his back. And when you have the back of your friends and you stand up for connection, this person is as important to me in my life as I am to me in my life. This person is a part of me. We are cooperating. We are a unit. If you cut off my arm, you think the other arm is not going to stand up and protect it, And so anyway, those are my thoughts that were a lot of which was inspired by the events of the last 24 hours. Anybody have thoughts on that?
I may have missed the answer to addiction. Tobias.
I'm sorry, I got away from addiction, but go back to it. Yes, go ahead.
I thought Tobias started saying something, but I didn't get it.
He said what?
Said I thought Tobias started answering the question or explaining it, but I didn't get it.
Yeah, I didn't remember what he said. I get too excited in my own thoughts. Tobias, can you join in on that? Tobias says, what I wanted to know was why were those people addicted to that particular page in that conversation? What were they getting out of it? What do you get out of continuing to follow someone who is unsympathetic, unkind, unenlightened, silly, etc.? Why would you want to follow someone like that? Why are you addicted to a drug that you know is not healing? It is destructive. What is the attraction? What is the charm? Well, I'll tell you my thoughts. My thoughts are that the attraction to what you despise and the people who are addicted to drugs despise the drugs because the drugs control them, you see. They don't have the ability to choose for themselves until the day they say, I'm through with you. I'm through with you. I'm going to go my own way. I no longer am going to dance with the devil. So why do people want to dance with the devil? Where is the devil? Inside them. So they dance with the devil because they're hiding from the devil. And they're dancing with their mirror, right? They're dancing with their shadow. You understand this? They're not dancing with another human being, as you indicated, Paige, when you're talking about connection. Connection in a shared reality is about dancing with another human being. When you dance with the ones that you don't connect with, what are you dancing with? A fantasy, because you're seeing in them yourself. And you're not listening to them and you're not saying, hey, why do you think that way? Hey, what's going on with you? Tell me your experience. Instead of saying, well, Rick has listened to all these interviews and talked to many, many people. He's been doing it for many years. And he had an interest to hear what these people had to say. He wanted to listen to them and see what they knew, because obviously he had a curiosity and he had some incentive inside himself to share these thoughts with others. Instead of saying, hey, I wonder why Rick, who does all this, would post this particular cartoon or whatever, they just berate him, you see. So they don't listen to him. They don't say, I wonder what he's trying to tell us, right? And so they immediately dismiss him. In fact, in spite of the reality of all the interviews he has done over the years, and how many times he has invited people onto his show who he thought had something valid to say to humanity, right? But they don't listen to him. They only listen to the little voice that says, cover up, cover up, cover up yourself and blame somebody else for what you really are. Don't tell the truth, because if you told the truth, then they would think you are a bad person. So you're going to have to berate him and say he's a bad person, because if you laughed or agreed with what he said, then your mother would be upset with you because she told you that you have to cry at a funeral. You have to cry at funerals. We know. And you say, well, Mom, you said he was a hard-hearted man. You said that the world would be better off without him. And now you want me to cry tears? Yes, dear, because it's a funeral. It's what we do. How genuine is that? Where's the devil? So why are people addicted to cigarettes and drugs? Because they're the victim of their drugs and their cigarettes, you see. The drugs captured me. I was just an innocent boy that said, well, I want to be like everybody else. I want to do drugs too. It was the drugs that did it. It's God's fault for giving us these drugs. Anybody but you. Anybody but you. When you can say, I deserve everything I get, God, if I turn my back on you, then why should I blame you if you turn your back on me? And all I see is my own reflection in the mirror that you wear on your back. You see? Go ahead, Winnie. What do you think?
I don't have any more questions.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Steve says, what a ride, what a ride. Because the tide is coming in, dear. The tide is coming in. And it's going to bring all that plastic with it. And it's going to line the beaches and the sneeches. You guys know what sneeches are going to get together and they're going to say, hey, hooray, hooray, because we're all the same, you see. We're all the same. We all threw the plastic in the sea. And it doesn't matter if we have 1 star or 3. We're all the same, you see. We're all the same. We all are to blame for what we're receiving today. And so if you want to run away and pretend like climate change has nothing to do with you, then boo-hoo for you. Because you have an addiction, you see. You have an addiction to a trust on being the one that gets taken to heaven in the rapture. Because you're the good one. You're the good one. Because all you have to do is look in that mirror and say, well, I'm better than you. I'm better than you. So I must be the good one. Thank God. I get to take the train to heaven and you get left behind. You get left behind. Do you guys know what the sneeches are?
Yes.
Paige, tell them about the sneeches.
That's the Dr. Seuss book about where the Sneetches, some did not have stars, but others had stars, and they constantly tried to outdo each other because they wanted to be better than the other. And so, but then the salesman type character comes along and he's like, well, I can fix this. I'll put a star on you. And so they go put on a star, but then the ones with the stars, they're like, well, I don't want to be like them. So they go and get their stars removed. And so it just goes back and forth where it all gets mixed up and they have a mixture of stars. But then they got all together. No, they couldn't tell who was who either. And in the end, they realized this is silly. Let's all come together and join on the beaches together and forget about who has a star and who don't has a star. And so that's the gist of the story. So
Now, the sneeches on the beaches.
yep, the Sneetches.
In the beginning,
had
only one set of them had a star. And they said, we're better than you because we have a star.
Right.
And the other ones all felt bad. It's because we don't have a star. So the guy comes along with his Dr. Seuss kind of crazy contraption machine and says, here, for a little payment, you can go through here and get a star. So all the ones
Right.
without stars are going through, getting a star, and they're going, huh, we're as good as you because we have a star now. And meanwhile, the guy that has the machine is collecting all the money, right? And then they the other ones who already had the star said, hey, that's not fair. We're better than you, so we need 2 stars. So they go pay this guy some money to go through the machine and get 2 stars. And then pretty soon they're all running through the thing trying to get more stars. And then someone says, well, I don't have any stars at all. I'm going to have them removed because the ones who don't have stars are better than the ones who do. And meanwhile, the guy's just pulling in the cash, for them going through and getting the stars. And in the end, they just get so tired of it. The Sneetches on the beaches, they say, it doesn't matter how many stars we have. We're all in this together. And they all become friends. And so I think that's the story Steve's trying to tell us, that we all threw plastic in the sea. That's coming rising sea. And so we're all in it. Let's forget who has more stars and who doesn't. Let's forget who's enlightened and who isn't enlightened. We don't have to cry at the funerals for somebody we hated. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you are not, that we're better than you because we cry more tears. Right, Paige?
That's right.
I kind of took over the story, but
You're good. You're good.
Sneetches on the beaches. Dr. Seuss is here. And he would like to be heard because, as you know, I was once a political cartoonist. And we went through that, Stephanie, how people thought I came to think that I was a prejudiced old man because of my political cartoons. And so they could not understand that I was making fun of them because they were the ones that were prejudiced. They were the ones who were looking in the mirror and seeing the devil inside of them. They didn't want to admit it. They didn't want to admit it that when they called Americans, Asian Americans, and African Americans, and whatever, they were creating new ways to separate them and inspire hatred back and forth. You're just an American, people. The other day, Steph read something on Facebook, and of course, we follow along with her adventures because we are integrating our energy with the earth, you see, because this is an opening for us. It's an opening in the dark energy that we can see where she goes. And somebody said, we need an Asian president. And Steph said, why do we need an Asian president? Shouldn't we have an American president? Why don't we need an Asian to come and be our president? And I don't think very many people would understand because everybody who read that probably understood that it's a special kind of person, special kind of American, because some have stars and some don't. And some have 3 stars and some don't. And some are better than others. So now we need to have an Asian American be a president. And so wouldn't it be nice if we just had an American be president? Because actually, the Constitution requires that you have been born in the United States in order to be a president, which has been interpreted to include its possessions, you see, or during a required stay out of the country, although that's been questioned by many. And of course, you remember that many questioned whether Obama, I guess because he was Black, and he had a father who had come from Africa, was an American. And so people like to play that game, don't they? They like to play the game of race, that we can judge you by the color of your skin. Here, we got a picture in our head of what the American should look like. They should look like an English American. But we don't need to say English American because we know that's a true American. All the others are only fake Americans. And we need a fake Asian American. to be the president, you see, so that people can get over their hypocrisy. So let's have a little hypocrisy so we can get over hypocrisy. And so the devil looks back at you because the devil's inside of you, see. So let's just be Americans. Let's just be the happy sneetches on the beaches who had to pay a lot, you see, to come to understand that it's better to just be friends and neighbors and not hate each other by how many stars you have on your butt. And so, what I'd like to say is welcome to the USA. Because the USA will continue, you see. It will continue because of the fire in the belly of those who say, I won't play that way. I'm not going to be that damn hypocrite and say Asian American and African American and this American and that American. Steph wrote an essay once where she was mocking this, and she said, well, it was at the time when they had a special language, supposedly, for African Americans, had their own lingo. And she said, because they couldn't learn to speak English, and all the people that couldn't understand English in one generation. And she said, well, my stepfather spoke Norwegian because he was part of a group that came from Norway. And they talked Norwegian at home until he started high school or elementary school, 6 years old. And he couldn't go to the bathroom unless he could ask in English. And he couldn't ask to borrow a pencil unless he could do it in English. And he learned real fast. And he spoke pretty good English. Didn't take him long to be understood. So these excuses make no sense. They're just excuses to perpetuate the idea that somehow African Americans are stupider than the rest. And they can't speak English because, they didn't hear it in the home. It's ridiculous. And in her essay, she said, well, I married a Indian from India heritage who grew up in Africa. So is he an African American or an Indian American? And what about my children? Are they Indian Americans? They're African Americans and not German Americans or English Americans or Scott Irish Americans, because that's my heritage. How come his heritage gets to trump mine? And why? When people say, well, we got to have an ethnic dinner today at school, so everybody brings something from your ethnicity. Does that mean the Black families should bring pizza because that's what they like to eat, or tacos? What the heck are they talking about? Because they don't eat those foods at home. What they eat is pizza and tacos and hamburgers and chips. So is that what they should bring to the ethnic dinner? What the heck are you guys talking about? Why are you so prejudiced? Why are you inspiring people to be prejudiced? I'm not against culture, and Steph is not against culture, but culture is a living thing. It is what you create when you sit together and you said, let's have a shared reality. Let's have a shared reality. The heck with buying all our pictures at Walmart and hanging them on the wall and saying that's an African American there and that's an Asian American and I'm a real American. And so if Steph's kids were born from a real American and an Indian American who had never seen Africa in his life, didn't know what the color of the sky was over it, but her other son was the result of her relationship with an African American, that is, somebody who was descended from slaves. I'm sorry, I said this wrong, didn't I, Steve? You did, Steph. Because her husband knew very well what the color of the sky was over Africa because he grew up there. So her children, by him, were Indian American, but he was really from Africa. But she had a son whose father was the descendant of slaves in America. And he wouldn't know the color of the sky over Africa, but he's an African American. And her son is an African American, not a German American, not an English American. And she's not a real American, you see. So this baloney is what I mocked, you see. I mocked the prejudice of the ones who saw it in others like me, but they're too stupid to see it. So let's say hurrah for the sneetches on the beaches that came to see. They were all the same. Let's have a hurrah for the true Americans who have different colors and different stories to tell, and will be the foundation of the new nation under God. And they will not be Christians, you see, because Jesus is already back and he already says, hey, I'm here to talk. And so, Jesus, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Jesus says it's true that the new nation under God will not be a Christian nation. USA was never a Christian nation. This is a foolhardy trick by the demon inside of you that wants to cram your fantasy down the throats of others, you see. Everybody in the new nation under God will be entitled to follow their heart, you see. And they won't say, hey, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to have to shoot you today. And they won't say, hey, 2 stars is better than 1 star. They will say, we found another way. We found another way. Because we heard God say, hey, if you want to play that old game of heaven and hell, of good and bad, of right and wrong, in the way that you condemn another, then you will be condemned, you see. You will be condemned to the hell you created. You will be condemned to the fires of hell, because the devil inside of you is the devil that knows home when it sees it, doesn't it? It knows home when it sees it. So those of you who haven't figured out that God created the earth as a paradise for his children can inherit the hell that felt like home to them and leave the Garden of Eden for those who have come to see that all the sneetches on the beaches are equal, you see. And that doesn't matter how many stars you have in your war chest. It isn't going to save you from the fires of hell if that's where you dwell in your heart. And if your heart says, I love God today, and this is a God-loving nation and not a God-fearing nation, then God will say, thank you, my children, for coming back to me. Thank you for my children for having the courage to say, I will stand beside you, Jesus. And if they come after you, they'll have to come after me. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid anymore because there's a fire inside of me. And that fire inside of me says, let's burn up all the old church ladies who think they're so pure that they can condemn anyone who wears their hair a different way or is a different color, etc. I'm not picking on women, you see. I'm picking on the hypocrisy. And the church ladies, as Mary did say, were the ones who caused her to say, wow, I sure don't want to play their way. I sure don't want to play their way. I don't want to be the hypocrite that says to my kid at the funeral, you got to cry harder because everybody's watching. And I know I said that man was the hardest heart man you ever did see, because he wouldn't step inside the church, you see, and that the world would be better off without him. But you got to cry now, because that's the way we do it, you see. We're the hypocrites because we don't see the demon inside of us until we see it in the one outside of us. And when you can see that the demon inside of you is reflected back to you in your addiction, you see, then you will cease to be addicted to a fantasy and you will come back to reality. Thank you for being here today. And I will lead the closing prayer, because the closing prayer, you see, is to be the one who will say, thank you, Jesus, today. Thank you, Tobias and Steve, for being here. Thank you, Winnie and Paige and Jim and Paula and Steph, for all you do, because I love you. And I want you to be my friend and to stand with me on the beach and say, hey, I love you today and you love me, and let's just have a jamboree and not worry about the rising sea, because God has it in hand, you see. God has it in hand. Thank you all for tuned in and listened today, and I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you will consider the new nation under God, which is the third option. The two choices are not cutting it, people. Two choices where they're banging at each other and they each think they're better than the other ain't cutting it. So let's just accept that it doesn't matter what color your skin is, whether you have orange hair or you have brown hair, whether you have black eyes or blue. The color of your skin doesn't determine the state of your heart. So thanks for being here. Anybody have any last words for the viewers? All right. Well, we will say goodbye then.